Hey there, and welcome back to another edition of Premier Investments in Wealth Management. My name is Doug Wagner. I'm your host, and before I introduce the two gentlemen who are here with me today, what I'd like for you to do is take the opportunity to go to premieriwm.com. Doesn't matter if you use your phone, a tablet, a laptop, or even a desktop. You can even use a Commodore 64 if you'd like. premieriwm.com. Click Get Started, and from there, to answer a couple of questions, you'll be provided a one-page Premier Vision document. Are you ready for retirement? Maybe you don't know. Maybe that's why you're curious and you're here to find out what Premier Investments in Wealth Management has for you. This is just the beginning of your financial future. This one-page Premier Vision document is yours, plus a free, no-obligation consultation. So again, premieriwm.com, click Get Started, and get your one-page Premier Vision document and your free appointment to find out if you're ready for retirement. Or you can call for an appointment, 800-383-6590. Without further ado, let's introduce the other two gentlemen in the room with me. He's a new sheriff in town, Vice President of Wealth Advisor, Premier Investments in Wealth Management, Elias Randall. How you doing, Elias?
Excellent, Doug. Happy to be here with you again.
Yeah. Summertime feels good. Live is easy. I'm pretty much down with that after what seems like a longish winter. I'm ready for some warmer weather. What about you?
It was a longish winter.
Yeah.
But just look at the calendar. Summer's basically almost over, and it just started.
Don't say that. Oh, my goodness. Somebody who actually may be happy about that because it means the kids would be going back to school. He's a wealth advisor, accredited investment fiduciary, certified financial planner, professional with over 10 years of experience in the investment industry, Dr. Casey Mushrush.
Just you, Doug.
Yeah. So you've got big summer plans for the kids?
Oh,
Everybody's out?
we do. So yeah, everybody's out. So all five of us have pool passes actually. So
nice.
My wife decided last year that she wanted to be pool mom.
Yeah.
So that has carried over to this year as well. So we're going to be doing that. Now, I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Now with the Commodore 64, if they go to that website, there's so much information it might take 2 floppy disks. So
the big, not the little mini disc, but the floppy disk. Do you even know what we're talking about? These things are 5,
Nope.
4 and a half.
I don't even want to know what the new technology is called.
Yeah, but you can play Oregon Trail for days on that one. That is too good.
Sounds like you just need to get a pool.
Yeah.
Don't give my wife ideas.
The
In-ground
neighborhood
pool
is so close.
Auto cover.
It's all good. It works perfectly. Hey, go to premieriwm.com. Not only can you request a meeting on there, but you can also ask questions like Tammy did. That's what we're doing this episode. We're answering your question. Tammy said, I just got me remarried, and my new husband and I both have adult kids from previous marriages. How do we merge finances while still protecting our kids' inheritance? This is a really difficult situation. There's a lot of moving parts in here.
Yeah, this is a kind of one of those things that, Tammy, this isn't something that we run into, not infrequently in today's day and world, but, having a blended family, especially a little bit later in life, does bring in some additional, I'm going to call it planning considerations, exactly to the point that you're bringing up on here. I think really that number one, the first thing that we should be thinking about or discussing in a situation like this is it starts with trust.
Okay.
Right. So having that conversation with the other spouse, making sure that you both are on the same page and try to figure out what are the overall goals that you're looking to try and accomplish and make sure that they actually match up. Now, if they don't, that is okay. Right. We'll talk about some other things maybe a little bit later on this, but at the end of the day, the first thing has to be to figure out what is it that you're trying to do? What is it that your spouse is trying to do, and how do you actually work through these various different issues? I would assume, and again, maybe I'm making the assumption on this particular piece, but if you guys are getting married, you probably have some baseline level of trust in each other.
Right.
Otherwise, you probably would not be going to this part, at least at this point. So I would suggest that maybe you guys start that conversation and just make sure that you're both engaging and that you're both kind of thinking through these things together.
Yeah. Casey, that's a good point. And another part of that is that, it's important to have this conversation earlier rather than later.
Yes.
And again, as adults, this is the second time around for both of them, right?
Right.
So it's one of those where I think that they have a pretty good idea of where this needs to fall in the conversation. But like Casey said, serious issues, trust, concern, consideration as well.
Well, I don't think you can do too much proactive and honest communication. And I think something else to consider, maybe both of you have been working with a financial professional or one of you has been working with a financial professional. Might be a good idea to, in the scenario where only one of you is working with someone, you want to facilitate an introduction, start to understand that process, see how that goes. And let's say it's two people that are independently working with somebody. Maybe have a conversation about, hey, let's talk with both of them, and then let's make a decision on who's going to help guide our financial advice and running our investment portfolio. And ultimately, you may have to make a decision that eliminates one of those people, but I think the more consolidation and having one voice, having one voice to give you advice and guide you, I think there's value in that.
The more moving parts in a situation like that, the more opportunity for mistakes there are.
I mean, it's also just that additional coordination over in those various different areas, right? I can think of some situations. So let's just take, for example, back in April when we had a lot of that kind of turbulence that was happening because of the macroeconomic environment at that point in time. Let's say you got a spouse, two married couples, about the same level of assets, and one of them moved their assets more aggressively because they said, oh, this is a really good buying opportunity, and the other one panicked and moved everything more conservatively. What have they done? Nothing. They just canceled each other out, right?
Yeah.
So exactly to your point that when we have that deeper level of coordination at the household level, because again, when we talk about marriage, when we talk about these things, ultimately it does change the way that economic it takes two economic units and turns it into one. Now, that's not to say that we can't keep assets separate, right? You can maybe have things that are titled over into those various different places, but generally speaking, when most people are getting over to that marriage standpoint, and even over in a second marriage, oftentimes we start to see where it's, we're trying to put together these various different planning priorities, and we're trying to consolidate or trying to get everybody on the same page of pointing toward the same goals together,
Right.
which can still be done a little bit separately, if you will. It does make it a little bit more complicated. And I know I've got a couple of clients that we do that, where we run basically reviews side by side, but we still think about things from a planning standpoint as an overall household.
Premier Investments in Wealth Management Financial Program, and we're talking today with Dr. Casey Mushrush and
Just you, Doug.
Elias Randall. We're in studio here, and we're answering your questions. If you want to submit a question, you can do so very easily at premieriwm.com. Just click contact, and you can do it through there. Premier Investments in Wealth Management named to Forbes 2025 Best in-State Wealth Management Teams. We're answering Tammy's question. She just got remarried. Her and her new husband both have adult kids from previous marriages. They want to merge their finances while still protecting their kids' inheritances differently. Something that is one of the fundamental things, but in all of the haste and the excitement, sometimes can get overlooked, are the most simple things. Number 3 on our list today.
I think updating beneficiaries is something that's good to do in this situation. I don't know. I don't know that if you were to divorce someone and you're now in a second marriage, do you want your ex-spouse to be entitled to your retirement accounts if something happens to you? You're building a new life with someone else, right? They should probably be the beneficiaries of accounts. And then from a contingent or secondary beneficiary, where would your money go if something happened to both of you?
Right.
Well, maybe that's where you delineate, these kids are going to get this, these kids are going to get this, right? Because you don't have to have all of the same beneficiaries, but I'm sure you want your spouse to be your primary beneficiary.
Yeah.
Or at least consider it.
Yeah, you wouldn't know if they were angry necessarily, because you wouldn't be around to take the brunt of that anger.
Well, but even on that, like part of the issue on that too is that sometimes the answer exactly to what your point is, Elias, it depends on what the plan docs say. Right? So take, for example, over in the 401k world, there are plans that are out there that will say, if you become divorced, we're going to automatically, we're going to basically treat that person as if they didn't exist. Right? That's actually embedded within the plan documents themselves. There are other ones that do not say that. And so it's whoever is listed as the beneficiary. So if it is an ex-spouse, they're the ones actually that take it. And what's really interesting, if you go through and you read, and I don't care what state you're in, you go read the estate litigation case law.
Doug's gonna read it. Doug's gonna read it.
Oh,
right
it is.
now.
It is
exactly.
full. It is full of these beneficiary issues and untangling that kind of stuff. And generally speaking, what we see most of the courts saying is they look to see, what does the actual plan documents themselves say? Did they have the opportunity in order to make a change? So, for example, on that, somebody gets divorced and then 3 days later they pass away. They don't view that in the same light as somebody that happened 20 years ago. So, who receives those assets? I don't know. Now, that is a terrible answer, especially when we get over into the estate planning world. We want to know, what is the plan with those assets? What are you actually going to do on those? And I can recall extremely recently here, and this actually was not a divorce type situation. It actually had to do with some assets that one spouse had inherited. And we were going through doing a beneficiary review on it, and she owned the account individually, and then the 2 kids were actually listed as the primary beneficiaries. And the simple question was, does this need to be an asset that is utilized for retirement assets or for retirement income? Well, yeah, I want to make sure that my spouse still has access to those, even though we know ultimately it's going to go down to the kids. Okay, well, if you look at the way the beneficiaries are set up, that's not what's going to happen. And so making sure that we have these things put over into a place that we actually understand what that order is going to be incredibly important in that overall coordination of just the financial planning piece in terms of income generation, as well as the estate planning piece on where those assets ultimately go to.
Let's go there with you again, because that's number 4, is considering a trust-based estate plan.
Yeah, so I kind of hinted at this a little bit earlier on, but depending on what you're trying to accomplish, there are various different ways that you can set up your estate that you can allow your spouse access to a principal value of funds, but they can't necessarily go spend the principal value. Okay. We consider these, I would say, like whether it's a Q-tip trust, like a qualified terminable interest property trust, or maybe there's some sort of like a credit shelter trust if we're trying to fund a Q-tip. There's a lot of different ways we can actually set these things up. Okay. But basically what it does is it sets aside some funds that allow a spouse or somebody else for that matter access to interest payments, access to some level of principal, possibly, depending on the way the overall thing is distributed, but they can't change the beneficiary arrangement, meaning that they can still have access to the funds, right? They can still maybe make decisions. If you take like a home, for example, and you plug a home over into a Q-tip trust, they can still live in the house, but they can't go sell the house and then give those proceeds away over to somebody else, because if they move or if they transfer from that property over to another one, basically it stays within the trust itself. You got some other sign-offs that you got to get from everybody else who may have some beneficial ownership within that. So there are some things, even from a legal perspective, that you can put protection to make sure that those assets are going to go exactly where you want them to. And especially in the divorce context, that might be a little bit more relevant in that kind of a situation. If I want to give my spouse, maybe my spouse that I'm marrying, I love her very much, or I love him very much, but he didn't do as good a job planning as maybe what I did. Well, I don't want to make them destitute when I pass away, so maybe we list them as utilizing some sort of a trust-based plan, giving them access over to some funds, but ultimately I still control where that ultimate disposition ends up.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That's Casey Mushrush. We're talking also with Elias Randall. Let's talk about joint versus individual assets as you're working your way through this. Second time around for each of them, I would imagine they're a little bit older. Maybe they say, I would like to have maybe a little bit of independence in my funds. And that's something where you have to maybe come to an agreement upon what's being treated as individual, what's being treated as joint.
You will. And for simplification purposes, so retirement accounts are all individual accounts. So there's no such thing as a joint IRA account, right? You could be married, so you have a spouse, but legally, like if someone calls Premier and let's say they request money, hey, we want to take money from our account, but it's an IRA for the spouse we're not talking to, legally they cannot make that request, right? And we understand, yes, it's your household money, but a retirement account, whether 401k or individual IRA, those are registered by Social Security number, and that's the only person who can make those requests. So those are going to stay individual accounts, which means the beneficiaries are important. Now, joint accounts, you can absolutely set those up, and then it's joint ownership. So anyone can request transactions. And maybe if you're in the mood to still have more individual money, any account can be registered as an individual account as well. So there is flexibility. There are options. I think the main thing is, one, just understanding who owns what and how are the beneficiaries set up.
Yeah. And not only the things for the investment portions, but also things all the way down to the who's paying the bills, how they're paying them, how is the checking thing taken care of? Because a lot of families, you have one person who takes care of the bills and the other one, it's like ours. I write out I Venmo every month. So I just make sure that I get that money over there to make sure that everything's taken care of.
They should give you an itemized invoice of all
No.
your expenses.
We got a pretty good idea pretty good idea what's going on with those things. That's the Premier Investments and Wealth Management Financial Program right here on your radio. Also on YouTube. Thanks for joining us here. My name is Doug Wagner, along with Dr. Casey Mushrush.
Just you, Doug.
And Elias Randall with Premier Investments and Wealth Management. Would love for you to go to premieriwm.com, click Get Started, answer a few questions. They'll provide for you a one-page Premier Vision document. You can use that as your roadmap to your financial future. Do you know if you're ready for retirement? Do you know if you're ready for maybe your kids' education in the future, if you want to fund all or a portion of that? It's getting more difficult for them and for you, so it's better to do this now than later. premieriwm.com. Just answer a few questions. They'll actually hand you a copy of that one-page Premier Vision document as well. You can take home with you. Choose whether you're going to work with them or not. I've made the choice to work with Premier Investments and Wealth Management, and I hope that you do too. Premier Investments and Wealth Management named to Forbes 2025 Best in State Wealth Management Teams. We're talking about Tammy's question. She just got married or remarried, and both her and her new husband have adult kids from previous marriages. They're trying to figure out how they put together the finances for the family while still protecting each of their individual kids' inheritance. And another one where you come in, Dr. Mushrush.
Yeah, just to you, Doug. You're the only one that has to call me that. Now, I did want to kind of bump back real quick, just because these items, as far as like the joint individual assets, and then also the trust planning, or trust-based estate plan. I mean, that can have those aren't necessarily separated.
Okay.
Right. And what I mean by that is there's different ways we can have joint ownership. So we can have joint with rights of survivorship, meaning both parties have a 100% vested interest within that piece of property. We can have joint tenants in common. So each of them own a percentage of that jointly owned asset. And then, maybe a portion of it actually goes into the estate when the other person passes away. So we can own things jointly by percentages if that is the appropriate way to do so. So there's a lot of different ways, even on that joint side. We just have to make sure, again, that we understand what the overall goals are of that household, what they're trying to accomplish.
Right.
Now, the other part of that too is there might be some tax planning considerations. Right. So I'm going to pick on our friends in Minnesota. So take, for example, in Minnesota, there's actually a state-level estate tax. So at $3 million per individual, there is an estate tax that actually goes above that. So let's say that we have a household that has $5 million in assets.
Right.
So we may not want to have everything owned joint in that household, simply because from a tax planning standpoint, well, we don't have a problem when the first person passes away, right? We've got $2.5 million that would be allocated to them, so no taxes due. Right. But second person passes away, and now I've got $5 million, and I have $2 million that is subject to that estate level tax. Okay. Because again, they also don't have portability, which is being able to use the deceased spouse's exemption amount. So in a situation like that, we may be utilizing some sort of a combination of planning techniques on this, where we have two separate trusts, okay, and then we fund one trust with $2.5 million, avoid that $3 million threshold at that point in time. Then the other person just owns the other $2.5 million. Well, I don't have to worry about that $2.5 million because I've used one exemption, and then I don't have to worry about the other $2.5 million because I've used the other exemption on that side. So then we can pass those assets not subject to any estate tax. So we just saved estate tax on $2 million by changing the way that we own the assets rather than just owning everything over from a joint standpoint. Now, I think this is where that goes to what your next point was, involving a financial planner and the estate attorney, right? Because when we have these conversations on there, oftentimes what I have run across, most people don't really think that reading tax law is fun. There's a handful of us out there. I'll admit it.
Again,
but
not the last us. Sorry, bro.
No, there's no us.
well, okay. So there's a
No one
handful.
else-
There's
no
a
one else in
handful
this
of people. There's a handful of people who are nerds that like it. I guess I'm one of those. One of those few.
Hey, and I'm thankful. So you enjoy doing it. Go ahead.
Well, when we start to involve the financial planners, when we start to involve the estate attorneys, it's not because we're going to walk in and tell people what they want to do, right? People already know what they want. My job is not to tell people what they want to do. It's for them to tell me what they want to have happen, and then to figure out how do we actually get things organized and set up in a way that we can best accommodate that. Now, sometimes it can't be done, right? Sometimes people want things that either are illegal, right? Or, from a statutory standpoint, we just can't set it up. Like, well, I want to set this thing up in a perpetual trust and it'll never go away. Well, not in most states. So depending on what they're trying to accomplish, the financial advisor and the estate planning attorney, and even like the CPAs over on that side, we can come in and actually assist you to understand what your various different options are and how to set this stuff up in a way that actually accomplishes what you're trying to accomplish and then to maximize the benefit to you. And that's really when you have that team of professionals on your side, what they're going to be doing is really assisting you rather than dictating on high what you should be doing in all these circumstances.
Casey Mushrush and Elias Randall with Premier Investments in Wealth Management, named to Forbes 2025 Best in State Wealth Management Teams. Find out more about what they do at premieriwm.com. There's lots of downloadable material on the website. You can make an appointment right there online at premieriwm.com, or you can call 800-383-6590. Talking about Tammy's questions. She just got remarried. Her and her new husband both have children, adult kids from previous marriages, and they want to make sure that their individual or their inheritances are protected as they get together. We talked a little bit earlier, very beginning, about honesty, conversation, communication. And here, this is where it can get really kind of difficult, because if you're trying to communicate and you've got the potential for rival families, because it's not 100% where the kids from one spouse get along with the kids of the other, because you have ones who are like, where is this person coming from? All of a sudden, now they want a little piece of the pie. They want to get their beat. They're having these conversations can be difficult. How do you advise your clients to take that first step?
Well, I actually have some personal experience with this. So I think just being honest with everyone, letting everyone know what's going to happen. And so for me, I come from a split family, right? Divorced parent situation. And I don't know if I drew the short straw, but in both of these families, I guess I must be viewed as the most responsible, because everyone has communicated to me that when this time comes, you're going to be making all the decisions and taking care of everything. And so I know what everyone's wishes are. And I think I was also chosen because I'm just going to do exactly what they wanted to happen. And I know there's a few characters in the family that are going to have questions and going to want to know stuff, and the answer is going to be, you're going to get what you get. And I don't want to hear any, complaining, because I'm just doing the work I was told to do.
Yeah.
So, I guess I don't know how every family's best going to do it, but if you're proactive and it's all planned out, and your executor and the important people know what you want, then that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, sometimes it's about laying down the law like that. Another thing, too, that I got thinking about this is I've heard a number of you at Premier Investments in Wealth Management, Casey, say, you know what, this allows us to be the bad cop, because we're the ones that get to lay down the law if you are the person who's working with the financial portion of it.
Yeah, it is one of those things. I have told people if they need to scapegoat somebody, they can scapegoat me. Like, I have no problem doing that, because, again, I'm a neutral third party, so to speak. I actually have that level of separation. So there's it is a way over on that side. The other piece on that, at least as far as this communication, the TV drama of the reading of the will. Don't do that. Like, number one, it's not a thing. You don't gather everybody up. And I've actually fielded some questions even over on the law firm side. It's like, well, we're going to go do this and we're going to sit around. We didn't have a reading of the will. It's like, no, that's not a thing that happens. Like, it gets filed at the courthouse. Go read it there if you want to see it. So,
Great.
and that other thing too. I mean, the other part of that is making sure that people are aware of what your overall intentions are ahead of time. It significantly smooths out that overall relationship, right? And really, when we look at things over through the estate planning context, which is really kind of what this conversation is about, we want to avoid all those emotional minefields at the outset. And what I mean by that is when somebody passes away, right? So, because think about the context that we're talking about here. Somebody's passed away here. Now, whether it's mom or it's dad, or maybe it's stepmom or stepdad, somebody has passed away. And maybe they passed away in near succession over to one of the other spouses, but somebody is out of here.
Right.
And at that point in time, people aren't thinking clearly. Emotions are extremely high. And when people are in a very agitated emotional state, they do not make the best decisions. And that is sometimes when you say things to someone that you maybe later regret. It can have a tendency to happen during those periods of elevated, those elevated emotional time frames. So, really, when we look over through something like this, communicating, here's the different things that we're going to be doing. It helps to eliminate all those big questions that are out there. And if people are going to be upset, they have the opportunity to do that ahead of time. And then they can calm down and understand what the reasons are on why things are going to go the way that they're going to go, versus having to process that while also dealing with whatever that other loss is that just happened as well.
Makes sense. Tammy, best to you, your husband, and to your individual kids, and may you continue to grow wealth and do it appropriately, and do it through premieriwm.com. Check in with the guys over here. They'll sit down with you, or you can make an appointment by calling 800-383-6590. Lena has a question as well. I finally paid off my student loans. I have about $400 a month freed up. Should I invest it, or should I build more savings first? Elias Randall?
So I would start to answer this question for Lena, and thank you for the question. Great question for a young investor to ask. My initial response would be an upside down question.
Mm-hmm.
I would ask her, if you were to lose your job today, how long could you go without making a paycheck?
Interesting. Okay.
What is the answer to that question?
Okay.
Because if it's, well, I have an emergency fund, I could go 6 months without working and making income. All right, well, let's start investing some money. But if you do not have a sufficient emergency fund, I would consider doing that first, or working on both of those. But if you just start socking your extra $400 a month away into an investment account, and then you need some cash, you might be subject to some penalties and taxes and things you weren't planning on. And so there's a little bit of an order of operations there where, one, let's make sure we have enough cash available in an emergency fund. And if you don't, then let's figure out what is the plan to get there.
Casey, I'm just going to take, by the way, this question is asked, that she doesn't have a financial plan. And I guess it's a good thing to put some meat on the bone right away and say, hey, let's go and get that emergency fund started. But at the same time, probably needs to sit down and sketch out a financial plan for her future.
Yeah, and again, you kind of make the assumption maybe this is somebody who's a little bit younger on that side. Maybe it's a possibility it was a Parent Plus loan or something like that too. So maybe they're actually a little bit closer over to retirement. We don't necessarily know just based off of how the question is asked. However, exactly to your point, I mean, we got to figure out what the overall goals of this household is, or what Lena's goals are. What's she actually trying to accomplish? Exactly to what your point is, and I think that's what you're asking, Elias, is, well, number one, let's take care of this immediacy, like the things that could actually create some sort of financial train wreck, right? Solve that problem. Now, after we get over from there, where we know that we're not going to have that, or we've maybe purchased ourselves some time by putting the correct insurances in place, right? Now, when I say insurance, your emergency fund is an insurance account. Right? It is insurance against things that are going to happen to you at some point in time in the future. It's insurance against life happening. That's what an emergency fund is. Unfortunately, you don't earn money on it. It costs you money, and that's why it is extremely boring and nobody likes to talk about them. Understand if there's any of those other goals, or putting together those financial plan, kind of that next step, what are other things that are coming on that you might need access to that cash? Right, because what we're going to be treating for those are a little bit different compared to maybe a longer term style goal, right? Because if the goal is I'd like to save for retirement, and retirement is 35 years off, we're going to treat that a little bit differently compared to, well, I know that my car is getting ready to, go up in flames because, I had to go jump out and run around it with a fire extinguisher here yesterday.
Yeah.
Those might be slightly different priorities, at least in terms of where we need to be putting the money in terms of getting it ready.
It's interesting, too, because I just recently got back from a wedding. My neighbor's daughter got married, and we were in Chicago for the weekend for that. And he's with the Air Force. He's a captain in the Air Force, and he flies tanker transports, and she's a doctor of ophthalmology. And so this is the first time they've been together for 11 years. This is going to be the first time they will be living under the same roof, the same place at the same time, which is kind of old-fashioned quaint. But, I mean, they're both professionals in what they do, and it's really interesting how they're going to be able to put their financial future together. And her grandfather's a financial professional, so I'm sure that somebody's going to be looking over their shoulder and has had a conversation with them in order to make sure that they can take care of things like that are these other expenses. Elias Randall and Casey Mushrush with Premier Mushrush had a with Premier Investments and Wealth. It's not as bad as what I was
going to say. I have heard
the other night completely
I have heard worse.
Casey Mushrush and Elias Randall with Premier Investments and Wealth Management at premieriwm.com. Find out all the information you need right there. You can even download information. They are named to Forbes 2025 Best in State Wealth Management Team. Make an appointment online or call 800-383-6590. And it's something we're talking about. Should I be investing it or building more savings first? Again, we're going backwards to do this because something has nothing to do with that $400 per. There are billions of dollars that are left on the table every year in free money by people who refuse to match 401ks. Shocked me when you guys told me this. I was blown away.
So that's another thing you could do is evaluate your retirement account contributions. So I think when we first started answering this question, it was kind of under the assumption this is a newer investor. Well, okay, let's evaluate retirement contributions. Let's assume maybe this person's been a great saver and they've taken advantage of their 401k match and been doing all of these things along the way, and now they have their student loans paid off. So then it'd be a couple questions. One, are you maxing out any of these accounts? Do you have room to save a little bit more? And the other thing I'll mention is, let's say when you evaluate that and you've done a financial plan and you're doing all the things that you should be doing to have success with your money, maybe this $400, you could maybe increase your lifestyle a little bit, have a little bit of fun every month too. So I think it's with this question, I think the answer is very fluid because it's really just depends on where is the person at, what do they need to accomplish with their money. And now, if you're not doing, like if you're leaving 401k money on the table and not getting your company match, well, that's a no-brainer. It's part of your compensation package. You really want to work and not get paid for the work you're doing, you should take advantage of those things.
Right.
So, when you look at it, yeah, maybe there's room for more savings. Maybe there's room for a little bit more enjoyment.
Lifestyle.
Hopefully there is.
Well, I was going to say, I'm going to pick back on that, right? And again, I think this goes back to something that you mentioned a little bit earlier on about maybe we have some sort of a plan or put together some sort of a plan. I think it would be completely and totally appropriate if she ran through a financial plan and found out that, Lena, she needed to save $250 a month, right? And then she's got a very high likelihood that she's going to hit that income level that she wants. Just go spend the other $150. You don't have to save the entire amount, but make sure that you have the savings mechanisms put in place first. And once you actually have that, then go through and by all means, I think in a situation like that, it would be appropriate to actually increase lifestyle a little bit in that particular instance.
Yeah, get yourself a coffee on the way to work.
That's right.
Go out to lunch once in a while.
Have
a little fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it goes back to that tagline that we used to use all the time. It's your retirement, now enjoy it. And we could just call it more, it's your money, now enjoy it. Kind of really expand that out just a little bit, because I don't think and this is always I always kind of get looked at like I've got two heads. when I say this, especially to other financial professionals. I'm like, I don't think it is appropriate that you save every single penny that you possibly can. And they're like, why on earth would you not do that? Like, look at the math and all. Like, because it's not a math statement. That is not a math comment whatsoever. That's more about, more quantity of life does not necessarily translate into quality of life. And so when we want to look at this thing where it is inappropriate, we want to balance the quantity versus quality aspect. And we want to make sure that you have that high quality life while having the sufficient quantity in order to make that happen. But if it's just quantity for quantity's sake, I mean, I suppose there's a handful of people that are out there that all they want to do is save and they have no other thing that they want to do other than see numbers go up on a screen. But generally, most of the individuals that I work with, they're trying to translate that over into meaningful experiences and meaningful things with either their friends or family or the people and things that they actually care about.
Casey Mushrush and Elias Randall from Premier Investments in Wealth Management answering Lena's question. I finally paid off my student loans. I have about $400 a month freed up. Should I invest it or build more savings first? I want to get to another portion of this too, because we talked about 401k, but the other vehicles for investing that are out there, a traditional IRA versus a Roth IRA, are there any, is there a preferred one depending on your current situation, your lifestyle, your age, your income, et cetera, Elias?
I think so. So one, it's going to be dependent upon your income and your tax situation. I'm a big believer in the Roth accounts for a couple different people. One, young people, certainly. You have a very long time horizon to just pay the tax today, let the money grow, let compound interest work for you on a tax-free basis. And also, I think you can make an argument for higher income earners to at least do some Roth money, right? Because here's what we know: when people retire, they don't stop spending money, right? And the more money you can get put away into a Roth account, you're doing a couple things. One, you're controlling your future taxes. Future taxes, zero, right? You don't have to worry about taxes going up or anything like that. Now, there's a lot of moving parts to it, but a lot of times I think you can make the argument for increasing contributions to Roth IRA, Roth 401k.
Okay. Gotcha. That makes sense. Premier Investments in Wealth Management at premieriwm.com. Click Get Started. Get the one-page Premier Vision document after you answer just a few questions. Are you ready for retirement? If you're like Lena here, she's saying, do I invest it? Do I build more savings first? These are the kind of questions that you can answer with a financial plan, and that's what they can do for you. That's what they build at Premier Investments in Wealth Management, so you don't have to. They're the professionals at it. You go to the doctor if you're sick. You have an issue with the law. You go to a lawyer. This is why you come to people like Premier Investments in Wealth Management, Casey and Elias at premieriwm.com. Click Get Started, or you can call for an appointment, 800-383-6590. Named to Forbes 2025 Best in State Wealth Management Teams. And Casey, I'm going to wrap this one up here real quick by sort of putting the 5 and 6 in this note together, because we sort of already talked a little bit about 4. The idea of when you have a financial plan, then you are taking into account risk, comfort, and the timeline, and then also the importance of making sure that it just goes without you having to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the people who've been extremely successful, and this is one of the reasons 401ks actually work extremely well, it's automated. Right? You don't have to think about it. It just actually happens. So, when you understand, I know how much I need to save, you know the different accounts that it needs to go to, and you have an automated system where you're putting it over to those different accounts, and then you don't have to think about it. Like, it makes life so easy. Yeah. And that's really, at the end of the day, when we build out that financial plan, bringing in that level of simplicity, or bringing this entire complex ethereal idea that is out there that I want to spend some money at some point in time, maybe sooner, maybe further away, and bringing it down and translating it into, okay, let's save these over to these different places, set that up, and you have a very high likelihood that you're going to be okay. Like, that's what we do.
Yeah.
And being able to do those aspects of it, having that investment allocation really dictated and driven for us, and then also putting it over onto that autopilot gives us the best opportunity for future success.
Got about 5 minutes left in the program. We're going to move on to Jorge's question. He asked, my wife and I are 56 years old. We own a small business that has been profitable. Our retirement plan's always been selling the business, but as we get closer to retirement, I'm not sure the business alone will be enough to fund our retirement for the long term. We've neglected saving outside of a small emergency fund. Is it too late to catch up? Elias, are there different mechanisms that are available for business owners as opposed to employees of businesses as far as savings?
There are, so it depends on how that's all structured as far as the business is concerned. But this is a very common problem with small business owners, and it's understandable because they're reinvesting capital to keep the business going, continue to grow. But I think it does highlight that you could even view it as diversification. But if you're going to put every dollar into your business, and in this situation, we always thought we would sell it and that'd be enough for retirement. Mm-hmm. Well, there's plenty of businesses out there that you might not be able to sell it for that amount of money.
Yeah. Diminishing returns.
Or it's just maybe it's in an industry where that's not the type of, maybe you can do it and make a high income, but there's not as much of a market to sell it to someone else for.
Right.
So now in this particular case, 56 years old, is it too late? It potentially could be. Maybe it's not too late. But there are options, and a couple of things to remember. And I don't know how this business is structured, but if it's Jorge and his wife, they should be able to start some sort of plan, whether it's just those two or maybe they have a lot of employees. There are options and there are things you can do. Now at 56 years old, you're going to really have to start hammering it away. Mm-hmm. If you had the value of the business and no investment accounts, at minimum, you're going to have to make a commitment to really sock money away to start to catch up.
That makes sense. Casey, let's talk about the different things that they can do, the different catch-up contributions, because they're at 56, and if they've not done any of these things before, it's critical for them to know.
So there's good news and bad news, right? Bad news maybe is, I guess good news is that you're recognizing that maybe you're behind. Bad news is you're probably behind. The good news, though, as the business owner, there's a lot more flexibility in actually designing that plan compared to maybe somebody who is just working somewhere that all they have access to is a 401k, okay? And what I mean by that is maybe depending on the structure of the business, maybe you should be utilizing something like a solo K plan where you can actually maximize contributions. It's like $70,000 or something like that between profit share, depending on cash flow within the business. Depending on cash flow again, maybe you're looking at a cash balance plan that you can actually put on top of that as well. And now we've just increased our contributions maybe to a couple of $100,000 a year over into some sort of a tax deferred or tax favorable, something along those lines as well. So there are some various different things in order to really significantly increase that overall contribution. It's going to depend on a lot of different factors that are specifically relevant to you and what your business and what your industry is and actually what makes the most sense in this particular context. Cash flow is going to be a major thing in this particular instance.
Right. It's something that's critical when you encounter things like this to take some action, because hiding away from it is not going to get you to where you need to be. Jorge, 56 years old, you asked the question. The answers lie at Premier Investments in Wealth Management. Work with a professional financial planner that can help you stress test your retirement opportunities. What does it look like for you? How do you have to structure this? It's professionals that can get you to the point where you can feel comfortable with the retirement that you need to and that you want to. So get in touch with Premier Investments in Wealth Management at premieriwm.com. And it's also important for you to get an understanding that they're working with you on a regular basis. These are not not one size fits all plans. These are tailored specifically to you and to your situations. Jorge, whether it's you and your wife, whether we go back to Lena and her husband, anybody, these plans are made directly for you. PremierIWM.com is the website. Click Get Started, answer a few questions, get the one-page Premier Vision document, and a free appointment to sit down with my friends at Premier Investments in Wealth Management. Casey, what's the phone number in case people want to call?
You can call us at 1-800-383-6590.
Go ahead and do that. Premier Investments in Wealth Management, named to Forbes 2025 Best in State Wealth Management Teams. My name's Doug Wagner for Elias Randall and Dr. Casey Mushrush.
Just you, Doug.
Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Premier Investments in Wealth Management and LPL Financial do not provide specific individualized tax or legal advice. We suggest that you discuss your specific situation with a qualified tax or legal advisor. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is not a guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal. There is no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect against market risk. Forbes' Best in State Wealth Management Teams ranking was developed by Shook Research and is based on in-person, virtual, and telephone due diligence meetings and a ranking algorithm that includes a measure of each team's best practices, client retention, industry experience, review of compliance records, firm nominations, and quantitative criteria, including assets under management and revenue generated for their firms. Investment performance is not a criterion because client objectives and risk tolerances vary, and advisors rarely have audited performance reports. Shook's research and rankings provide opinions intended to help investors choose the right financial advisor and team, and are not indicative of future performance or representative of any one client's experience. Past performance is not an indication of future results. Neither Forbes nor Shook Research receive compensation in exchange for placement on the ranking. For more information, please see www.shookresearch.com. Shook is a registered trademark of Shook Research, LLC.